Chapter 7. Text, Translation, and the Limits of Interpretation. By the early 20th century, the basic outlines of Mesopotamian mythology had been reconstructed. The names of gods were catalogued, major epics were translated, chronologies were refined. Yet translation is never a simple transfer of words from one language to another. It is interpretation. Cuneiform is not a single language. It is a writing system used to record multiple languages across centuries. Sumerian, a language isolate with no confirmed relatives, was the earliest. Akkadian, a Semitic language, later became dominant. Within Akkadian, dialects such as Babylonian and Assyrian developed. Each language has its own grammar, idiom, and cultural nuance. Translating religious terminology requires particular care. Words associated with divinity, fate, and assembly carry layered meanings.
The Sumerian term, often rendered as Anunna, likely meant the princely offspring or seed of An. In Akkadian texts, the form Anunnaki appears. Though similar, these terms were used in different textual environments and across different centuries. In early Sumerian hymns, the Anunna are invoked in celestial contexts. In later Akkadian literature, the Anunnaki sometimes appear associated with the underworld. This shift does not necessarily indicate contradiction. It reflects evolving theological emphasis. In early Sumerian hymns, the Anunna are invoked in celestial contexts. In later Akkadian literature, the Anunnaki sometimes appear associated with the underworld. This shift does not necessarily indicate contradiction. It reflects evolving theological emphasis. In early Sumerian hymns, the Anunna are invoked in celestial contexts. In later Akkadian literature, the Anunnaki sometimes appear associated with the underworld. This shift does not necessarily indicate contradiction. It reflects evolving theological emphasis. Modern readers often seek fixed definitions. Ancient texts rarely provide them. Much of what we know about Mesopotamian religion comes from fragmentary tablets. Clay, though durable, is not indestructible. Many tablets are broken. Lines are missing. Entire columns may be lost. Scholars reconstruct texts by comparing multiple copies found at different sites. These reconstructions require informed judgment. A damaged line may be restored based on parallel passages elsewhere. Uncertain readings are marked with brackets or question marks in academic editions. When discussing the Anunnaki, it is therefore important to distinguish between what is explicitly stated in surviving texts and what is inferred. For example, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Anunnaki are described as great gods who decree fate. In certain flood passages, they are depicted cowering at the storm they themselves have unleashed. Such imagery conveys emotional dimension, but it remains literary. In underworld texts, such as The Descent of Inanna, the Anunnaki appear seated as judges. Their role there is judicial, not celestial. The shift in setting illustrates the flexibility of mythic function. Scholars approach these texts through philology, archaeology, and comparative analysis. The goal is not to harmonize all passages into a single system, but to understand each text within its historical context. Dating is crucial. A Sumerian hymn from 2100 BCE belongs to a different political and cultural environment than a Babylonian epic from 1100 BCE. Though both may mention the Anunnaki, their theological frameworks differ. Another limitation arises from genre. Administrative tablets record offerings made to the Anunnaki, yet provide no narrative detail. Literary texts describe divine councils in poetic language. Ritual instructions mention invocations without explanation. The surviving record is uneven.
thousands of tablets remain untranslated. Many lie in museum collections awaiting publication. The picture we possess is extensive but incomplete. Modern interpretation is also shaped by broader intellectual currents. In the 19th century, biblical scholarship influenced early Assyriology. Scholars were eager to compare Mesopotamian myths with Genesis. The flood narrative received particular attention. In the 20th century, structural anthropology and comparative mythology offered new frameworks. Researchers examined recurring motifs across cultures: divine councils, creation from clay, cosmic floods. Within these frameworks, the Anunnaki were analyzed as part of Near Eastern religious patterns rather than as isolated phenomena. Academic caution contrasts sharply with popular imagination. In scholarly literature, the Anunnaki are not described as mysterious visitors from beyond the stars. They are understood as deities shaped by agrarian society.
This distinction rests on textual evidence. No extant cuneiform tablet describes the Anunnaki as technological beings arriving from another planet. References to heaven are theological, not astronomical in the modern sense. The Sumerian word An means sky or heaven. In ancient cosmology, heaven was a divine realm, not outer space as conceived in contemporary astrophysics. To read modern science into ancient myth is to impose categories unknown to the original authors. At the same time, scholars recognize the symbolic richness of these myths. The narrative of gods creating humans to perform labor reflects social realities. The flood myth expresses anxiety about ecological vulnerability. The divine council mirrors political structure. Interpretation must therefore balance literal translation with cultural understanding. Throughout the 20th century, major dictionaries and sign lists were compiled. The Chicago Assyrian Dictionary and other lexicographic projects provided standardized meanings for Akkadian terms. These tools allowed for greater consistency in translation. Yet, ambiguity remains part of the discipline. A single cuneiform sign may represent multiple sounds or meanings depending on context. Determining which applies requires careful analysis. The Anunnaki appear in contexts that range from solemn hymns to epic narrative. Their portrayal varies accordingly. Sometimes they are remote arbiters of destiny. Sometimes they are participants in dramatic scenes. Modern scholarship resists reducing these portrayals to a single narrative. As we consider the development of interpretation, it becomes clear that rediscovery did not end with excavation. It continues with each new tablet read and each new edition published. The discipline of Assyriology is cumulative. Each generation refines translations, reevaluates earlier assumptions, and integrates newly unearthed material. The Anunnaki, as figures preserved in clay, exist for us through this scholarly mediation. Our knowledge of them is filtered through language study, archaeological context, and critical method. Understanding the limits of interpretation does not diminish their significance. On the contrary, it clarifies their place within history. They were part of a complex religious system that evolved over centuries. Their identity was shaped by city-states, empires, and scribal traditions. Their names survived because clay endured. As we move forward, we will examine how, beyond academic circles, alternative interpretations began to emerge. These reinterpretations would carry the Anunnaki into new cultural territory. But before turning to those modern narratives, it is essential to appreciate the careful work that established what we reliably know.
The Anunnaki we encounter today are not voices speaking directly from antiquity. They are echoes reconstructed through scholarship, grounded in text, and framed by context. Within those boundaries, their story remains one of the most enduring legacies of ancient Mesopotamia. Chapter 8: Alternative Narratives and the Rise of Modern Myth. By the mid-20th century, the academic study of Mesopotamia had established a substantial body of reliable knowledge. Cuneiform texts had been translated. The structure of the Sumerian and Akkadian pantheon was understood in broad outline. The Anunnaki were recognized as high-ranking deities within a complex theological system. Yet outside academic circles, a different kind of interpretation began to emerge. The 20th century was marked by rapid scientific advancement. Aviation became commonplace. Human beings entered space. Nuclear physics revealed hidden structures of matter. At the same time, global conflict and political uncertainty fostered anxiety about humanity's place in the universe. Within this atmosphere, ancient myths were sometimes re-examined through contemporary imagination. In the 1960s and 1970s, a genre often described as ancient astronaut theory gained public attention. Writers proposed that certain ancient myths, monuments, and artifacts might reflect contact with technologically advanced beings from other worlds. Mesopotamian texts, newly accessible in translation, became part of this speculative landscape. Among the figures most associated with this reinterpretation was Zecharia Sitchin, who published a series of books beginning in 1976. In these works, he argued that the Anunnaki were extraterrestrial visitors from a distant planet, often identified as Nibiru. According to this theory, these beings came to Earth in remote antiquity and influenced the development of human civilization. Sitchin's claims were presented as translations of Sumerian and Akkadian texts. He suggested that references to heaven, divine descent, and celestial authority should be read literally as descriptions of space travel. However, these interpretations diverged significantly from academic consensus. Professional Assyriologists consistently stated that Sitchin's translations did not align with established philology. Terms he interpreted as referring to advanced technology were understood by scholars as ordinary mythological expressions. The word Nibiru, for example, appears in ancient texts as a term associated with a celestial body, likely a planet or star within Mesopotamian astronomy, but not as a distant, undiscovered world inhabited by beings. In Mesopotamian cosmology, heaven was a divine realm, not outer space. The sky god An did not reside on a planet, but in a mythic heaven above the earth. The language of descent and ascent was symbolic within a religious framework. Despite scholarly criticism, the ancient astronaut interpretation gained popularity among general audiences. Television programs, books, and documentaries presented these ideas as alternative history. Why did such narratives resonate? Part of the appeal lay in their capacity to merge ancient mystery with modern technology. In an era defined by rockets and satellites, the idea that ancient gods might have been astronauts provided a bridge between myth and science fiction. Another factor was the fragmentary nature of ancient evidence. Because many cuneiform tablets are damaged, and because Mesopotamian religion contains unfamiliar imagery, there is space for imaginative reinterpretation. Yet the distinction between imagination and evidence remains crucial. Academic methodology relies on linguistic precision. Cuneiform signs are analyzed within grammatical context. Words are compared across texts. Meanings are derived from usage patterns, not isolated speculation. Within this framework, the Anunnaki remain divine beings of mythology, not technological visitors. It is also important to note that Mesopotamian religion contains no descriptions of mechanical devices, spacecraft, or advanced machinery in the modern sense. References to chariots, storms, and celestial journeys are consistent with ancient mythological symbolism. The rise of alternative narratives reflects broader cultural dynamics. The 20th century saw growing skepticism toward institutional authority, including academic expertise. Popular media platforms allowed unconventional theories to circulate widely. In some cases, reinterpretations of the Anunnaki became intertwined with broader conspiracy theories involving hidden knowledge and suppressed history. At the same time, there has been continued public interest in genuine archaeological discovery. Museums have expanded Near Eastern collections. University courses on ancient history attract students worldwide. Digital archives now make tablets accessible online. The coexistence of scholarly research and speculative interpretation characterizes the modern landscape. For historians and archaeologists, the challenge is not merely to refute inaccurate claims, but to communicate the richness of authentic Mesopotamian culture. The true story of Sumerian civilization, with its irrigation systems, legal codes, and poetic epics, is remarkable without embellishment. The Anunnaki, as conceived in ancient texts, reveal much about early human thought. They embody structured authority, cosmic order, and the integration of religion with governance. They are part of a narrative tradition that shaped the intellectual history of the Near East. Understanding the difference between ancient myth and modern myth is essential. Ancient myth emerged from agricultural society, seeking to explain environmental uncertainty. Modern myth often emerges from technological society, seeking to reinterpret the past through contemporary concerns. Both are products of their time. As we continue our exploration, we must remain attentive to evidence while acknowledging the power of imagination. The Anunnaki have traveled a long path, from Sumerian hymns inscribed in clay to rediscovery in 19th-century excavations, to reinterpretation in modern media. Their story illustrates how the past can be reshaped by the present. In the final chapter, we will consider their enduring legacy, what the Anunnaki reveal about the origins of civilization, and why their names continue to evoke curiosity thousands of years after the temples of Sumer fell silent. Write your questions in the comments. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications for upcoming episodes of the documentary series. New documentaries are released every Wednesday and Friday on this channel.